Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from wherever you are joining us from around the world. Let me start by sending my sincere apologies for the delay in this live show. As I posted on the Facebook, the reason why we are delayed, the family duties call. I had to take my son to see an orthodontist, and this was not something that was already scheduled. It became an emergency. We've been going through a dental treatment for him for some time now. So my apologies and thank you so much for understanding that situation. I want to ask those of you who are joining to begin by sharing the video. Share it on Messenger, share it on your wall, share it on WhatsApp groups so that other South Sudanese people can be informed. As I mentioned throughout this program, we are going through very difficult times, and this time like this require every single citizen to be informed about what is happening in the country. So we like you to make sure that our people are informed, and one way you can do that is by helping to share the video so that others can join. This program today is going to be very brief. This is a very busy day. I still have a bunch of meetings to do. We have a lot of things going on in DC. And all of this, just to say, are wonderful things. We are creating a lot of awareness about the situation in South Sudan. We are informing a lot of people that have stood in solidarity with the people of South Sudan throughout our struggle about what really is happening in South Sudan. We are informing them about the security situation in the country. And as you know, every day, the situation in the country is becoming precarious. You know very well what is happening with Sudan and the civil war that is going on in Sudan, which has drawn in a lot of South Sudanese people. Our youth are fighting in that conflict on both sides, and this is something that is worrisome to all our people. So we are informing them about that. We're informing them about the humanitarian catastrophe that has been happening in Sudan, and South Sudanese people that are returning back to South Sudan and the awful conditions to which they are returning to. We are also informing them about the geopolitical scenarios that are happening. And you remember our president was recently in Russia, and since returning from Russia, we understand that a number of Russian operatives are operating in the country. I hope many of you have seen the recent story that Fox News was able to do that involved a bit of investigative journalism in which it became very clear that the Russian operatives are in the country, and not only are they in the country, but they are also extracting our minerals. They're extracting minerals of South Sudan, gold, diamonds, and other resources to fund the war in Ukraine. And not only that, they are training security forces in the country. And these security forces that they are training, from what we understand, some of these people may end up being used in that awful war in that country. So we are informing them about that. We are also informing them about the overall situation of human rights in the country and how the human rights of South Sudanese people continue to be abused by the regime. We are also informing them about the intercommunal violence that is going on, that the government is sponsoring. You know very well the situation that is happening in Warab State between Pungir Thik and Marial Wow community, where a number of senior government officials, including relatives of the president, are arming communities so that they can fight one another. We're informing them about a lot of things. We are talking about the detention of journalists and the lack of political space, how opposition figures are being detained and being harassed and being prevented from engaging with South Sudanese people, even as the government continue to say that elections are going to happen. So we are very busy here, and we are doing a lot of work, and we are trying to make sure that the supporters of South Sudan understand what is going on, and that they remain in solidarity with the people of South Sudan, not with this awful regime that is continuing to rape and pillage our country and our resources. So we will make sure that this program is brief, and we will not waste much time, and we'll focus on the topic that we are supposed to be discussing today. And many of you know very well, the topic we are discussing today is the economy of South Sudan. Now, Many of you know that the situation in the country is awful. The economic situation that South Sudanese people are dealing with on a daily basis are horrible. Inflation is among the highest in the world. And you know this. You don't even need to be told what the inflation indicators are, because the National Bureau of Statistics, as you know very well, has not been very well funded, and it has been releasing statistics that are completely shoddy. You remember the recent population estimates that the National Bureau of Statistics released, which were just laughable. You know, the state of Warab alone was assumed to have about the same population with the greater Upper Nile region, which obviously make no sense. So you know very well that this is a bureau that is not functioning, is a bureau that is completely politicized, and is being used to serve the interests of the president. So we are not going to bother ourselves to quote statistics that are meaningless and that make no sense to the people of South Sudan. But everyone that is in the country, whether you are in Juba, in any part of the South Sudan, you know by yourself what the prices are in the market and what the change in prices is in the market. Every single time, almost every week, every month, prices are going up. And this include, by the way, prices of the products that are made locally. It would make sense for products that are imported, because imports have to be purchased through the use of hard currency, in this case, the US dollars. So every time when there is a depreciation of South Sudanese pounds, you would expect that the imports and the prices of the imports is going to increase. But even the products that are produced locally, why are they going up? Why are they going up? And all of you know very well, if you go to the market, you know very well that the prices continue to increase on a daily basis. So you know that. So inflation, so starting first with the macroeconomic variables, inflation has been going through the roof. It has been happening for many, many, many years. We'll talk a little bit about why that is the case. And we will also share more about the other indicators. The other second indicator that we look at is the exchange rate. You know very well that the country has been operating with two different exchange rates for so many years. The official exchange rate at the central bank, which basically the central bank used to make available hard currency to local banks and Forex Bureau. And then the Forex Bureau are supposed then to make the hard currency available to regular citizens and to business people so that they can provide goods and products for the market. But we know very well what has been happening there. This has been used as a tool for individuals to go and get foreign exchange at a very cheap rate from the central bank, and then they use basically those foreign exchange to sell them in the black market and make a killing within a very short time. That situation has been happening, and it has been affecting the people of South Sudan. You know very well also the banks in South Sudan are banks that are not really giving loans to businesses. So if you're a regular citizen and if you want to go to a bank and you want to borrow, first of all, it doesn't exist for most people. But for the tiny percentage of people for which this is available, the interest rates are absolutely crazy. Sometimes some of these rates are beyond 20%, which is unheard of, and basically mean that the price of capital is outrageous and is beyond the reach of many South Sudanese people. This is the situation as it is now. That is on the aggregate, on the broader market. Now, for many years, we have been talking about the issue of employment. And you know very well, the essence of any functioning economy is to make sure that any person that is able to work, that is physically fit to work, has a job, right? And those of you who live in Western countries, you know very well this is one of the key indicators that any government pay attention to, the employment rate. The employment rate is very important, because when the number of the unemployed increase, it means that a lot of people are not getting whatever they need to survive. They have no money to be able to rent houses, to buy food for their families, to pay bills, to send their kids to school. Without job, it's impossible to get that. Now, in some democracies in Europe and maybe in Canada and Australia that are a bit more advanced and that are run through socialism, when you have no job, there are benefits that come. And these benefits, they include unemployment benefits. They include if you have no job, the government will find you a housing. If you have no job, the government will make available food through food stamp. The government will make available to you healthcare and those kind of things. Now, in environments where the government is very weak and the economy is poor, like in the case of South Sudan, you know very well that those services do not exist. And that is why in those environments, the employment become essential, because it is incumbent upon each individual to go into the market, make the money, and make available to their families what they need. And they cannot do that if they do not have jobs. Now, for many years, we have been talking about this. In fact, when I was at the World Bank as a World Bank economist, we wrote a strategy on how the South Sudanese government can focus on creating jobs for the people of South Sudan, for the economy, so that the economy can function well. Now, the broader aspect of this employment strategy was actually based on growing the economy. Right? The focus is economic growth, because it's only through the growth of the economy that you can be able to create jobs. When industries are expanding, when new investments are being made, when factories are being opened, that is the only way in which labor will be demanded. And that way, labor will be employed, and you will earn through use of your labor to be able to provide for your family. And therefore, if you want to then buy services or goods, you will be able to do that using the income that you earn. And it's also the way in which the government expands its revenues, because the government expands its revenues by taxing those income, by taxing the capital expenditures of the companies that are making investment. This is something that is normal. It's how the normal economies around the world function. And in the case of South Sudan, this has never been the case. It has never been the case because primarily the government of South Sudan has not been interested in creating jobs for the people. In fact, the only sector in which jobs have been created in South Sudan is through government services. It's only through employment in the public sector. So if you look, for example, when the CPA was signed in 2005, and then the government of South Sudan began running the economy of South Sudan, you know very well that we had been in the bush for 21 years. And because we had been in the bush for 21 years, the entire economy of South Sudan was devastated by war, right? Majority of our people were unemployed. Many people were displaced and were in displaced camps or were in the refugee camps. And now when the government of South Sudan was formed, the government of Southern Sudan, if you remember, GOS, when it was formed, one of the things that it was supposed to focus on was to stimulate the economy. That was the whole essence at that time, peace dividends. And these peace dividends were going to come through creating jobs for young people, for women, for veterans, for people that were soldiers but were now being integrated back to the society through the DDR programs. Now, what happened? And initially, everything looked good on the paper. You remember that before John Garang died, he has developed something called the SPLM Strategic Framework for Transition from War to Peace. That document is there. Is available in J1, is available at the SPLM headquarters. Salva Kiir has it. Everybody in the government has it. But that document has never been implemented. What was in that document? That document envisaged a way in which South Sudan can be transformed within the 6 years of the CPA to move from a very low income country, what is called the least or the poor countries, the least income countries, to become at least a middle economy. Right? That was the vision of John Garang. And the idea at the time was for the entirety of our existence, and you know this very well because it's one of the reasons why we went to war against Khartoum. South Sudan has been deprived of investment. Now, South Sudan produced a lot of raw materials, and those raw materials were taken by Khartoum, and they were taken to Central Sudan, where the economy was booming, while South Sudan was neglected. So because of that, we complained of marginalization. We wanted our resources to benefit our people, rather than our resources being used to benefit the North. And that is why the infrastructure was growing in the north. That's why industries were growing in the north. That's why major companies like the Kanana Sugar Factory were booming in the north, while there was absolutely nothing in the south. Now, when we returned from the bush in 2005, the North Sudan has began exploring and eventually exporting the oil from Upper Nile region, right? From Unity State and from Upper Nile State, from Paluch and from around Bentiu. This thing started in 1997. And the oil was used primarily by the North Sudan to grow its own economy and to fight the war against the southern Sudanese people. Now, CPA, one of the accomplishments of the CPA was the wealth sharing. And with the wealth sharing, SPLM was now going to get 50% of the oil revenues, especially from the wells that were produced in the south. And in the SPLM strategic framework, the transition from war to peace, there were three key priorities that were identified in how to transform the economy of South Sudan within 6 years. The first thing, which John Grant mentioned very clearly, was that we were going to use the oil revenues to invest in the people of South Sudan. That was the key priority. Now, to invest in the people of South Sudan, what did that mean? It meant we were going to see where our people were already employed, looking at the economic activities in which they were engaged, and then invest in those economic activities so that they can grow and so that they could expand. Now, where were the people of South Sudan employed at the time? They were employed in two major sectors. One is the small farming, or what is called subsistence farming. You know very well in the Equatorial region, this is a region that is very rich in agriculture. It's a region where the land is extremely fertile. The climate is very friendly. Some parts like Western Equatoria has 3 growing seasons. And other parts of Central Equatoria, especially around Yei, and even in the Eastern Equatoria, around Chukudum and other parts, the land is extremely fertile. And a lot of our people, this is what they have been doing. This is what the parents taught them, grandparents taught them. These are farming communities where farming is a skill that is passed from parents to children. This is where majority of the people were being employed, right? Even in some parts of Western Bahr Ghazal, and even some part of Upper Nile, and even some part of Greater Bahr Ghazal in general. Subsistence farming is something that we all know. So we were going to see how do we scale up the subsistence farming and make South Sudan to become the bread basket, not just only of the Eastern Africa region, but of Africa and the entire world. That was a key priority. Now, the second sector, and is also related broadly to agriculture, was in the livestock. You know very well, if you're from Greater Upper Nile region, majority of people are cattle keeping. The same thing in Bahr Ghazal region. In fact, when I was at the World Bank, we estimated that the value of the cattle stock in South Sudan at the time, this was in 2008, we estimated that the total amount of cattle that in South Sudan was estimated to be worth more than $5 billion, right? That is the entire value of that sector. So it's a huge sector, a sector with enormous potential to grow exponentially. And you know very well, anyone that has been to the West, if you are in America or in Europe or in Canada or Australia, you know that the demand for beef is through the roof. Even in China or in India, these are economies where there are billions and billions of people. If you take China alone, the middle class by itself is about 500 million people. In India, the middle class is about 300 million people. And these people, they are going out every weekend. They are eating meat at the restaurants. They are ordering chicken. They're eating fish. So these are sort of wealthy economies. And in South Sudan, all our cattle, these are naturally bred cattle. They feed on grass. They eat very healthy material. These are not like the cattle that we have here in the United States or in Europe or in Canada, where there are artificial products that are added to them, right? So the idea was, how do we then use the livestock sector, which is, because everybody in these regions, in Upper Nile or Bahr Ghazal, have some cows. right? So how do we use cows to scale up the income of our people? That was the first pillar of the SPLM strategic framework for transition from war to peace. Now, even if you were to invest in agriculture and you were to expand the livestock sector enormously, without investment in the infrastructure, right, to create ways in which the food can be moved from the farm to the market, or the cattle can be moved from the cattle camp to the market where people can actually access it, you will be doing nothing. And we did a research. Some of you who might have read it, if you remember, one of the research that I led when I was at the World Bank was the country economic memorandum for Sudan. We did one for the whole country for Sudan, and we did one specifically for South Sudan. And one of the things that we identified back then, and I saw this with my own eyes, because we traveled to Yambio in Western Equatoria, and we found that there was a lot of food, a lot of fruits that were rotting. Right? We went to places like Yei, where there was so much surplus of food, but that food could not be transported from Yei or from Yambio to Juba, to the market, so that people can actually buy it. In fact, the population in Juba was importing food from Uganda and from Kenya, and the food that was being grown inside South Sudan was rotting because of lack of infrastructure, lack of roads. So this actually made it that the second priority was to build roads, to make sure that there was connectivity so that the products can be moved from one part of the country to other part of the country. Take, for example, in Jonglei, in Lake State, or in Terekeka, where there is abundance of fish. Now, this fish, if you want to move it to Yambio, you need roads. You need ways in which that food can be moved. And it's not just about road per se, it's also about the broader infrastructure so that the products, especially perishable products, can be moved before they rot, right? That require having electricity so that when you are harvesting that food or where you are catching that fish, there is refrigerated infrastructure where you can keep it and make sure that it is preserved without going bad. And then it can be transported through refrigerated trucks so that it can reach the market while it's still in the good condition. And especially if you are looking to export to Western markets, there are certain standards that you must meet. And these include safety standards. And each of the countries have their own safety standards. So there is a lot of inspection. Even now in South Sudan, we have the National Bureau of Standards. What it's supposed to do is to look at every food that is coming into South Sudan and check if that food is actually fit for human consumption. Now, we know that institutions in South Sudan are dysfunctional, and that is why our people has been fed with all these awful products from Uganda that are causing cancer and that are making our people sick and that are destroying the entire population of South Sudan. It's because our National Bureau of Standards is not functional. But in countries where it is functional, you have to make sure that the standards are rigorous, right? That is the only way you can sell to those advanced markets, whether in US, in Europe, in the Middle East, like places like Dubai, which are now growing, or in Saudi Arabia, or wherever. These are the places that we need to be sending our food. And to do that, it requires making sure that we meet the safety standards. That was the second part of the SPLM strategic framework for transition from war to peace. It was to make sure that we invest in roads, right? Make sure that there is a connectivity with the people of South Sudan. The third element was to create a conducive environment for safety that will be enhancing the ability of South Sudanese people to produce and to engage in the economy. Right? What does that mean? It means multitude of things. First, security, making sure that the guns are taken from the hands of the civil population so that anybody that want to farm, anybody that want to keep their cattle can be free to do that without being afraid or being targeted or being killed when they're in their farm. Right? It also means creating health care so that people are healthy. Healthy people work better. Right? You cannot have a population that is not healthy and think that you are going to build a good economy. It means creating training centers so that you build skilled labor, because labor, human labor, just pure strength without skills and ability to do things doesn't really get you that far. So we needed to build vocational training centers to make sure that we train the young people, we train the women with skills, and especially with sectors that have a very high pay within a very short time. What do I mean? Take, for example, things like textiles. Textile is one of the sectors that have been used by countries like China, countries like Bangladesh, countries like Malaysia to be able to expand very quickly. You need to train your people and teach them how to make clothing and to use raw materials and be able to turn it into a material that is used to make clothing. Right? So this was the third element of this strategy. Now, the SPLM strategic framework for transition from war to peace in 2005 actually informed what became known as JAM. What was JAM? This is Joint Assessment Mission. It was a mission that was created specifically as the SPLM was preparing now to form the government of Southern Sudan and also to join the government of national unity with NCP. And it talks about how the two partners in the CPA, the NCP and the SPLM, were going to work in tandem to create a conducive environment that will make the unity of Sudan attractive. So a lot of people participate in this. Pagana Mum was the one that was leading the southern delegation as part of the JAM. And a great work was done, right? This JAM is what then later on informed all the other strategies of the international community, whether it was the UN, it was the World Bank, and specifically for the World Bank, is what informed what became known as the Multi-Donor Trust Fund, the MDTF. Some of you remember? Yes, the MDTF. This was a fund that was created by the international community for the reconstruction of Sudan. And it has two branches, MDTF North, that was based in Khartoum, and the MDTF South, based in South Sudan. I work as an economist specifically to evaluate the projects that were being funded by the MDTF South, right? And all of this was informed by the SPLM strategic framework for transition from war to peace. All of this, we did excellent work. What happened? No implementation, right? No implementation. Why no implementation? Well, first of all, to make any implementation that can change the economy, it requires to use a tool that can actually work to make sure that what is in paper is what is in practice. And what is that tool? The budget. The tool is the budget, right? Because if you put something in the budget and you actually direct resources to it, that is the only way it can be done. There is no any other way you can do it. If you don't put things in the budget and you implement the budget as it has been agreed, then everything you are talking about is a complete nonsense. What happened with the budget? Well, the budget planning is always excellent. You have these 10 budget sector working groups, right? Many of you that have seen the budget of South Sudan, you know these budget sector working groups. There is public administration, there is economic functions, there is security, there is agriculture, there is rule of law, there is 10 of them, right? And during the planning, the way the planning work is inclusive. It is led by the government with the donors providing support. So for example, the World Bank would co-chair, but the Ministry of Finance will chair, right? So that the donors and the government coordinate in how things are financed. It will work very well on paper, right? You will look at program areas, the activities to be done, the costing of each of those activities, the timeline, look beautiful on the paper. But now, when it actually comes to the budget execution, this is where South Sudan has had problem from the very beginning in 2005 up to now. What happened? The money is diverted. That is what happened. The money is diverted. So take, for example, if we have planned that this money or this percentage of the money is going to be used to build roads. Then what happened? Now when it comes for implementation, the office of the president will write something. Sometimes it's just like a note to the Minister of Finance, and they will come with something that was not even in the budget. Give Mr. XYZ this amount of money, like that, and the money goes. And then they will come, oh, the president has decided he's going to do A, B, C, D. So bring the money. And if the Minister of Finance, whoever that minister is, doesn't matter, right? Whether it is a competent person or incompetent person, if that minister say no, you know what happens. The minister is fired. There is the degree. The degree will come out, the minister is gone, right? This is what has been happening. Sometimes, and I'm telling you this, all this is data that is available. You can go to the Ministry of Finance website. You will look at the budget, look at the budget planning and the budget execution. It's like day and night. It's completely meaningless to even plan because the money is diverted to things that were not agreed. And according to the Constitution of South Sudan, the money, the budget, is supposed to be a law that is passed by the parliament. And when it is passed by the parliament, it cannot be changed by anybody without the parliament agreeing to those changes. Has that ever been observed in South Sudan? No, never. There are years in which the ministry, some of the ministries we have, particularly the Ministry of Finance and the Office of the President, would overspend the entire budget, sometimes 50 times, right? So let's say the budget for them was $10 million. At the end of the year, when you calculate what they have actually spent, it would be 500 million. And no justification. They will come up with things that were not budgeted. One of the examples was the Dura saga. You remember the Dura saga? It was not in the budget. They decided that they are going to buy Dura. And the things that were budgeted, like roads, like schools, like healthcare, they were just put aside. And the money was diverted, right? This is what we have been doing in South Sudan. Now take the issue of roads, because you will see the budget, road is actually areas in which the money is actually released. But what happens? Well, one of the things that was adopted from the very beginning was a fiduciary system in South Sudan. Now, what is fiduciary system? Two things in particular: procurement and finances. Procurement is how the government decides to award contracts. So whether they are military contracts, road contracts, whatever contract, because government itself does not go to the market to buy things. So if the government wants something, it has to then create a way in which the private actors can compete, and then the government will choose among the private actors the one that is best to then perform a particular function, right? Let's say government wants a building to be built. The government itself doesn't go and build the building. What the government does is then to advertise that we want a building A, B, C, D to be built. And therefore, those who are interested will now apply, and then they will bid. They will say, here is how much it will take me to build that building. And then the government now will look and see which one provide a good combination of quality and of cost. Which one is cheaper and which one provide the best sensible ways for that particular product to be delivered. What happens? Well, I'll tell you a story. In 2012, during the National Liberation Council of the SPLM, this was happening at Nyakuren Cultural Center. By the way, and this was around the time when the Hijilij crisis came up. The SPLM was meeting, the National Liberation Council was meeting. And at the time, I was invited to come and help the secretariat. So I was in the secretariat, and we were looking in particular in the services, and we were looking at the roads. And what we found in the roads, we were looking at the two roads in particular. There was a road that, if you remember, the Nimili-Juba Highway. This road, by the way, was built entirely by USAID. There is no single dime of the government of South Sudan that was spent in building that road. It was entirely financed by USAID. USAID advertised, companies bid, a company was selected, it was awarded, and the road was built. Ministry of Roads and the government of South Sudan were just there to supervise, but the actual thing was done by the USAID. So there was that road. And then there was the road that the ABMC at the time, you remember there was a company called ABMC. It was owned by Bolmel, okay? ABMC had built a road to the Bill Farm, to the SPLM, to the SPLA headquarters, the Ministry of Defense. It's like 3 kilometers. And then it has built some road within Juba, like the Tongping Road, the road that goes from the ministries to the airport. And then it has also was attempting to build the Juba-Yei Road, which basically went and stopped once you reach Unimis. It didn't go anywhere beyond Unimis. So we were looking at the cost. Now, the funny thing is the Juba-Nimili Highway is much bigger, right, than any of these roads. Right? But what was the cost? The roads that Bolmel built were 3 times expensive than the road that the USAID built. And mind you, the road that the USAID built was built by the international community, an international company. And the road that Bolmel was building were supposedly being built domestically. So during this meeting, we decided that I was supporting a committee. This committee was chaired by Madam Awut Dengai Twil. You know very well, she's the Minister of Education. I think recently she has been named Agud Machot. Madam Awut was chairing. And you know, at the time, Madam Awut had just been relieved. She was Minister of Public Service, Minister of Labor and Public Service, and she had come up with massive reform in the public sector because we did a study and we found out that 2/3 of employees in the government, especially in the civil service, did not know how to write a basic sentence in English, and they did not know how to do a basic arithmetic equation. So if you say 27 plus 19, 2/3 of them could not answer it, could not give you a right answer. And they could not write. And these were directors, director general, deputy directors, assistant directors. They could not answer 27 plus 19, right? 2/3 of them, 70%, they could not answer that question. So Madam Awut had began a massive reform in the public sector. This did not go very well with some of the corrupt ministers in the cabinet, primarily my uncle from Jonglei State, Michael McQuaid. He was at the time, he had just moved from the Ministry of Justice at the time. You know what happened? Madam Awut was vilified, and then she was forced to resign, and she did resign. But she was still in the political bureau. So now we came back to the Nyakren, and she made a presentation, and she raised this issue, that the road that the USAID built, here is the cost, and here is the road that Bolmel built, and the road that Bolmel built are 3 times expensive than the road that the USAID built. How do we explain this? And the funny thing, Bolmel was there. He was inside the National Liberation Council meeting. And the Minister of Road at the time, Gary Chuanga Luong, he was there, right? And the previous Minister of Road, Anthony Lina Makana, was there, right? So she dropped this bombshell, right? So everybody was like, ooh, people were like murmuring. And then, so after she finished her presentation, Gier, who was the Minister of Roads, he felt provoked, because he has to provide an answer. How is it that the road that the USAID built cost this much, and the road that Bolmel built cost 3 times that road, and it is small, right? Smaller, and the quality is not even that good. So after she finished, Gier said, I have to answer. So Gier went to the podium. This was very interesting for me. I was just watching. So Gier said, the minister is right. Madam Awut is right. Absolutely right. That is the cost. The data is correct. There is nothing I can deny. But there's one thing that I need to say. The roads that were built by Bolmel, those roads were not awarded through a regular tender of contracts. Right? This was 2012, 11 years ago. Gier said, when these contracts were awarded, we received a letter, and he brought it out. He carried it like this. We received a letter. The letter came from the president. Here is his signature. And the president said, give this contract to Bolmel, and Bolmel will say how much it will cost him to build the road. Right? This was in the front of the National Liberation Council in Juba. So now the whole place was like, oh, Bolmil was almost hiding himself in the place. That was the reality. And that continues to be the reality up to today. All those contracts, all those roads contracts, they are not awarded through any bidding whatsoever. It's the president that will take a pen and he will write to a minister concerned and say, give this contract to Bolmil. Bolmil will tell you how much it will cost. That is it. Now, guys, let us be honest. What does this mean? What does this mean? This is corruption. This is corruption. This is misuse of the resources of the people of South Sudan. And we go around trying to blame people, cracking our head, calling for economic conference so that people will come and talk their head out day in and day out, when the reality is very clear. The same thing, by the way, is what is happening with these roads that are being built by ARC. Just the road from Juba to Bor is people are being charged billions and billions of dollars. Was there any bidding for those roads? No. What happened? The same thing. The president took out a pen and said, this road must be given to Bolmil. Bolmil is to decide how much it will cost. And they went a step further, where a certain percentage of the oil was earmarked for the use of Bolmil alone. Every month now, Bolmil received two cargoes of oil, right, to build a road that is going nowhere. It's been years. That road is not making any progress. What happened? Bolmil used less than 10% of the money he received from those cargoes, and then he will pretend to do something. The rest of the money is brought back at night to the house of Salva Kiir, given to Salva Kiir as his money. They think that people don't know. They think we, the people of South Sudan, do not know, but we know. And then the money now is distributed as handout to individuals. The entire country is placed under corruption, so that there is no way whatsoever for the country to move forward. There is no way whatsoever for the economy to be stimulated, for people to find work, for people to build skills. Now we are going for these graduation in the University of Juba, where thousands and thousands of people are being given degrees, yet they have no knowledge. We have become a country in name, but not in practice. This is what is called isomorphic mimicry. Isomorphic mimicry is when you take the appearance. So if you see, for example, how the Ministry of Finance function in a functional government, you just take that building, you build a building, and you think this is a Ministry of Finance, but it doesn't perform the way the Ministry of Finance is supposed to perform. You take only the form, but not the content. And by the way, this is a strategy that has been used by many countries. They pretend like they have for example, now we pretend we have a parliament, right? So there is a parliament, but it doesn't function like a parliament. It doesn't review the appointees of the executive. So anyone that is supposed to be appointed to the cabinet is supposed to be reviewed by the parliament. And if someone is not qualified, they're not supposed to be given the position. And you see, basically the way the government is functioning, because of that, corruption is being cycled and cycled over and over again. Even the president himself, when he come out and accuse someone of corruption, just wait, give him 6 months, a year, 2 years, you will see him reappointing the same person. An example is Mayiga Ye. You remember Mayiga Ye? Mayiga Ye, the president came out, called a press conference and said, Mayik is the one that is responsible for this Bargazal road. He went and brought a fake company, they did a corruption, and then what happened? Only for Mayik to be appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs, just a year later. Recently, what happened? Yellul, you remember Yellul? Yellul and Mayan Wall, right? First there was Mayan Wall and Yellul. These were the people that were accused of stealing money directly in the office of the president. They were also accused of forging the signature of the president so that they used that to get the money from the central bank. Hundreds of millions of dollars. These people were taken to court. They were sentenced to life in prison in court. And then what happened? The president pardoned them. And then Mayen Wall, who was in his office, who had stolen the money in his office, was appointed Undersecretary of the Ministry of Petroleum so that he could steal more money. And then what happened last week? Yel Lul, who was also accused of stealing the money, was now appointed back into the office of the president. My people talk about cartels, that the country has been hijacked by cartels. The economy is hijacked by the cartels. Do you know who is the chairman of the cartels? Do you know who is the CEO of the cartels in Juba? Salva Kiir. How can he not be? He's the one that signed letters, sending them to ministers, give this contract to Bolmel. Everybody knows in the country Bolmel is a thief, right? Even himself, Bolmel, knows he's a thief. And the president is the one saying, give this thief that everybody knows is a thief, the money, so that he can take the oil and use it the way that he wants. He's the same guy that labeled Yikai as a thief and then appointed him as the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And then what happened when Mayik was reappointed Minister of Foreign Affairs? There were salaries that were released for the foreign missions, our diplomats that are stranded in all the foreign missions. That money disappeared. No one knows what happened to that money. Would anyone be surprised if someone that has already stolen things was given more things? Why would they not steal more things? Especially if there is no accountability. We should not be surprised. And we cannot talk about some magic thing that will happen that will save the economy. There is no magic anywhere that will save the economy. The only way in which this economy will be saved is to remove the commander-in-chief of the thieves, the commander-in-chief of the cartels, and that is Salva Kiir himself. If we want to fix the economy of South Sudan, if we want to invest in our people, to expand agriculture, to expand livestock, to build infrastructure, to build real roads that connect our people from the areas of production to markets, if we want to build skills, to build a skilled population that can compete in the 21st century economy, if we want to build a healthcare system, education system that actually empower the people of South Sudan, the first and the most essential thing that we must do is to free this country of Salva Kiir. Make sure that Salva Kiir is removed because he's the chair of the thievery in South Sudan. All the thieving, all the corruption in the country revolves around him. Without removing him, there is no future in this country. Now you know very well where we stand. Agaga Achil, the previous Minister of Finance, made it clear to you all that the oil has been sold in advance. Right? Oil is sold in advance. Sold to whom? And by the way, sold in advance and the money has been used. Used to do what? We don't know. But you will not be surprised if the money is put in people's account. That was information that is revealed to you. You know very well the gold and the diamond are being sold. In fact, some of the companies has the members of Salva Kiir family who are the shareholders in those companies. The gold and the diamond of the country is going to their pockets. You know that there is a secret airport that has been built in Boma where people are flying in from Dubai, from Sharjah, from Abu Dhabi to come and take resources of South Sudan. Who are the people overseeing that? Those of Akodwal. People connected directly to the president. You know very well that the water has been sold to Egypt. Where has the money gone? People's account, people's pocket, right? So the entire country is being sold by a single individual who claims walking around to be the president. Can you believe there is future in this country in the hand of this man? No, there can never be. And we cannot crack our head and talk about, let's do this, this is how to do the economy, when we know very well that the budget of the government is going to be meaningless. Even right now as we speak, salaries have not been paid. Just the public finances are not working, they're not functioning. National Revenue Authority is being looted by individuals. The president is busy traveling around the world with huge delegation. Sometimes he goes with like 60, 90 people to visit these countries, people that will just go and do shopping. And these people are being paid per diem, daily allowances. And these allowances are outrageous, thousands of dollars. And the people of South Sudan are dying. People of South Sudan have no medicine. People of South Sudan have no schools. And we keep saying, oh, we were in the bush for 21 years without salaries. We were in the bush in 21 years without salaries. That was in the bush. We were fighting an enemy. We were all committed to dying so that South Sudan can be free. And the country is now free. Do you believe that you should be misused in such a way, that you should be abused, that your resources are going to enrich a single individual and his family? And you keep telling yourself that we are resilient. What is so special about resilience in poverty? If you are resilient, which is, I don't doubt, people are resilient, does that mean that you must be subjected to that kind of living for the entirety of your life? At what point do you reclaim your dignity? Right now, you cannot farm in the country. Why? Because the communities have been armed so that they can kill each other. If you go to a farm in a wrong place, you will be shot, dead. And if you are shot, your neighbor is not going to come to the farm tomorrow to farm. The same thing if you're a cattle keeper. Somebody, the youth will come and raid. Why? Because our people have been subjected to poverty. Young people have no jobs. You have your energy and you have no way to use it. Those with degrees that have spent time studying, whether within the country or in the region, they come back to the country and they cannot find jobs. What is the future then? Are you surprised that then people are turning to all these kind of gangs and crimes and all these things? No. That is what happened when human beings are deprived of hope. They become hopeless. Right? They become hopeless. And when they become hopeless, they can do whatever. They are capable of committing all kinds of atrocities. So my people, let us begin by taking our country back. And the way to do that, let us remove Salva Kiir. 2024 is the year to do it. By removing him, we can begin to rebuild our society. We can begin to invest whatever little resources we have, even without all the oil revenues. Just whatever we can collect, if we invest it and we achieve something, one thing at a time, we can take our country back. It has been done. There are countries that have advanced, that have went from zero. Countries that have no natural resources. Rwanda, for example. Rwanda has no natural resources. Yet it is now one of the most progressive societies in Africa and in the world. Countries like Malaysia, Japan. Japan has no natural resources, but is one of the richest countries in the world. Human mind. When we have a guy with a hat, the only thing in his head is a hat. That's it. How do you think this country can move forward? We have to make sure we change that guy and we put in place someone that can actually build an economy that works for the people of South Sudan. And I assure you, my people, 2024 is the year to do it. You and I, we have to do it. And we have to use whatever means necessary to make sure that we do the same. Leadership is what preserves a society. But a society in which there is no leadership, people perish. And that is the story of South Sudan. Our people are dying because there is a lack of leadership. We have someone there who is only interested in enriching himself and his family and is not interested about the country, about the young people, about the women, about all those veterans who struggled for years to make sure that South Sudan is free. There is nothing else to do, brothers and sisters. The only thing where our mind must be day and night is how to free this country of Salva Kiir. Once we remove this guy, I guarantee to you, South Sudan will move forward. The problem is not Ministry of Finance or Central Bank or whoever. Let's not look for a problem nowhere. The problem is the president, because we have in a president a thief. someone who wants to loot all the resources of the country for himself and a few cronies that surround him. We can only rescue this country by removing him. I hope all of you will be united and committed to this action, because without it, there is no hope for South Sudan. And we must restore hope to our people. Thank you. If you are a Matograp, yes, write your comment so that other South Sudanese can educate you. If you agree with this message, write your message. Those who don't agree with us, write it down so that we can educate you more. And I encourage you, all the young people of South Sudan, take it upon yourself to educate those who are ignorant and those who are blinded by corruption and by tribalism and by regionalism and by clanism. Let's educate them, and together, let's take our country back. Thank you. Until the next time, may God bless you.